Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Album Homework Assignment. Yes, it's Sunday morning. Hope everybody's got their coffee and their breakfast all ready to go because we've got in the house Guitar Hack and Craig Sybert from Musing Podcast. What's going on, fellas? How are you this morning?
Good.
Good, man. Good.
Good to hear it. So they have given each other their assignments. Everybody knows the rules. They've had a week or so with their albums. Again, they had never heard them before they were given these albums. So we're very curious to see what they have to say. Craig, we're going to have you start us off. What were you given by Mr. Guitar Hack?
I was given the group is called the Demix. It's actually their self-titled album. I think that's technically their only album. They did put out a rough version of it before, EP type version of had only had one song that was on the regular album. But this is their actual album that's of their name, the Demix. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 11 songs. Very well, let's see, it was the 1980 or 81 release, I think. And then the
78.
Oh, was it that? Because I know they released the earlier one earlier. I didn't know if this was the earlier one or the later one. But wow. I first off, thank you, because I love to expand my sound. And I've never even heard of these guys, let alone heard this album. And I was extremely impressed with it. I mean, to start it off, it is kind of what I look for when I look for albums from bands that I don't know. I like to hear the raw sound, and unfortunately, a lot of these the band members, I think, are kind of either split up before, and two or three of them have passed away. Mm-hmm. So there's not many of the band left, unfortunately. But I think that it's very raw. It's very when AC/DC records, they record live, so it feels like there's a kind of a vibe and some missed notes here or there or skips over there. I got that feeling from this album. I really got that feeling of they're sitting in a room and they're just jamming out these songs as hard as they can. It is very punk. I think I would give it probably the description of Social Distortion meets the Sex Pistols. Maybe a little dash of Murphy's in it. That he's got that gravelly voice, that gravelly growlish voice, but the music is really, I mean, it's classic punk. It is, like the songs like Lucy is, man, that's just one of the ones I just want to headbang and play the 3 chords and go along with them. It is true punk sound. So that's kind of the way I would describe it. Now, for me personally, I like old punk. It also gave me kind of that feel of, so when Green Day started, they actually put out a couple EPs, and then they put out a compilation of those EPs called, I'm going to forget the name of it. I'm going to look at it. 1,039 smoothed out slappy hours. And it was kind of a compilation. It was kind of a compilation of their early EPs and songs. And it was also raw, but it was also a lot more punk. A lot more, a lot less poppy than a lot of their later stuff like Kerplunk or Dookie. And I really enjoy that feel and sound. That's kind of what it reminded me of, was picking up an album like that where they're starting off and they're just getting their feet wet. So they're playing a couple different types of songs. They're still in the kind of the same genre, like that punk genre or that kind of early pop rock genre, but some of them feel a little disjointed. Like, I got to the last song in the album, and I got to tell you, I almost had to go back and look and see. All Gone Wrong is the name of the song. And when it started, I'm like, this is a Danzig song. Danzig did this song. It sounds like Danzig. And then it started playing. And then he started singing. I'm like, this is a Sabbath song. Is this a cover of a Sabbath song? I got to listening to it. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's their song. It's really good, but it's very dirgy. It's very slow. It's very dark. And I don't want to say demented, but because the words don't really go that direction, but it felt like a Danzig or an old Sabbath song that they were kind of covering and making it sound like their sound. But all in all, again, going through the songs, Blue Boy is a lot more upbeat as well. Blue Boy and Lucy are probably my 2 favorite off the entire album. They're very upbeat and kind of that 3-chord punk rock sound. New York City is obviously that is their kind of hit off the album.
Yeah.
it was actually like the year it came out, it was like Canada's #1 song, or voted the greatest Canadian song ever. And I recognized it just a little bit, but I didn't realize who it was. And in listening to it a couple times, I'm not a fan of that song. I really like everything else of this album except for that song, but
not the hit.
but it's weird though, because if I listen to it, like tonight, I actually did a ride on my stationary bike, and I run the whole list while I was riding. So I'm like, okay, I'll try to match the beat to them. When I got done, that's still the song that was stuck in my head. That's still the song that I kept coming back to and singing. So obviously it was a hit for a reason.
Yeah.
But that's the only one that I just didn't feel too like it fit. Like it was their hit song. It was their, I'll use an analogy that Pete will love here. It's their Sweet Child of Mine off the album. It's the one that everybody loves and it catches, but it just doesn't sound like it's supposed to be on the album. But I will say that going back and listening to their EP version of it, I love that version a lot more.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that rougher cut version. I don't know. It just feels like it has more energy in it. That song is kind of slow and, poppy and moves at a regular beat. But that older version, that older EP version, felt like it had a lot more energy to it. In fact, all the songs on that album did. It felt like that felt very Sex Pistols. That felt very early punk, Stiff Little Finger type stuff. I mean, just really 4 on the floor, 3-chord punk, and them screaming. This still had that feel. The actual album had that feel, but it had a little bit less of that natural flow of screaming and getting up on stage and doing, that kind of stuff. One of the other things, the whole 400 Blows felt like an old Runaways song. When it started up, I heard Cherry Bomb in it, and I heard like early Joan Jett songs and stuff.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it felt a little like that female punk genre time frame. It felt like it was coming up through that. And the News felt like so if you played the News, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but I've been waiting to talk about this for like 5 days.
Yeah.
So when you play the News, if I played it without distortion, it would be a 50s pop song. It's got that chords, it's got chord, minor chord, minor chord. So it's kind of got that old Buddy Holly, what's one of the other, the Big Bopper type feel to it, where it's kind of like that chord, then a minor chord, then a chord, and then it gets to the chorus and it kind of upbeats. And so I felt like almost like a 50s sounding groove. And if you played it without distortion, it would sound just like an early 50s song. What else? Very bass driven.
The bass is killer on that.
It is. And
the bass lines on that are sick.
And they are. And it's not, so a lot of music, some sounds get toned down, and bass is usually that one that gets kind of put in the background, but it's so out front in this and so good. And it's not just, bass following the melody or bass following the drums. It is a lot of runs. It's a lot of trills. It's a lot of moving stuff up and down while they're playing and moving opposite the guitar. So I felt like that stood out a lot more, but again, the sound was also higher on it too. So, and they were a 4-piece, right? Not a 3-piece. It was guitar, singer, bass, and drums, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like a 3-piece though. It felt like the singer and the guitarist were so close together that it felt like a 3-piece. And usually when you have a 3-piece, the bass comes through a lot more. When you look at bands like Green Day and Rush, but Geddy Lee's kind of the front man on that anyways. But those 3-piece bands, you usually get that bass sound a little bit more, comes through a little bit harder. What else did I notice about it? Trying to squeeze everything in, Pete. You told me I only had a few minutes, so
You got as much as you need.
I mean, I could seriously ramble on about this album because so one of the things about it I noticed also was the length of the songs. They were perfect punk songs.
Right.
New York City is 4 minutes. All Gone Wrong, which is the Danzig Sabbath one, which drones on, but I think it needed to do that because it felt like that type of song. Everything else is between 1 minute 23 and 3 minute 31, and most of them are on the lower side. And that's punk. That's the way it's supposed to be, and that's the way this album flowed. And I think the only downfall I had with that, the two songs that were longer on that, is obviously one of them's the hit, so it's going to be on there. And the other one got put at the end, which is okay, but I would rather have had maybe them bookend the album. Maybe New York City would have been first, and then kind of give me those slam hits in the middle, and then kind of ended up with that. This was when released during, vinyl era and maybe cassette at that point. So I don't know if that was the exact split. I should have looked that up to see if it was the exact split. If there's 10 songs, it would have been 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10. So yeah, it would have started out each side with really short songs. So
11 songs, so it's probably about 35 minutes long.
29 90 or something. I know, because my ride was 30 minutes, so it ended just before my ride did today. Okay, so all the technical stuff aside, again, I appreciate you handing me this album. I know that when we talk about this, one of yours, the other one suggestion was the Cult, and I'm a big Cult fan, so I heard of that album, but I'd never even heard of this. Again, when New York City came on, I'm like, yeah, I kind of know that. But I'm really pleased to jump into something different like this, to absorb something that is still in my genre. I like old punk, I like rock, and it kind of sits in both of those fields just a little bit. Like I said, it even harkens back a little bit to a little bit of the 50s sound, but it also kind of jumps forward into that dirge sound, that Sabbath and Danzig sound. And I think when you look at albums like this, there's such a small people that know about them.
Oh yeah, nobody knows about these guys,
right? But I think that if you look at some of the bigger bands that have come out since then, that kind of have, I'll riff off that All Gone Wrong song that's kind of more Danzig and Sabbath. But if you look at kind of bands nowadays like The Sword or Wolfmother, who are kind of carrying that sound over and using that type of sound, that Sabbath sound and that Danzig and Soen and Misfits sound, I would venture to guess they've probably heard of this band. They're not a mainstream known by a lot of people that listen to music, but I'll bet those bands like that are influenced by people like Sabbath have also went around and said, well, what's close enough to that? Or if they're influenced by bands like the Sex Pistols or the Runaways, they've went and said, I wonder what bands out there like that. And they probably stumbled onto them. And it's the same way with like Stiff Little Fingers. What you don't hear about them very much, but when you do, you hear about bands like Green Day saying, we listen to them, we reference them. Metallica talking about Diamond Head, Diamond Head, Pete's, that's your genre. And I know you're big into that, but a lot of people that listen to like Metallica or Megadeth at the time had no idea who Diamond Head was. Right. Or, they were all into metal and they knew what all of them were. King Diamond, Diamond Head, all those guys that they referenced when they were referencing people. So I am extremely pleased with this album, and very small drawbacks. Like I said, I think that New York City is a great satire. And I caught that in the lyrics when it started. I'm like, they're not really talking about New York in a really good way now that I think about it. And then I did a little research and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a whole satire on them being in New York City. But I think that, and again, the fact that I actually prefer their album before that was really raw more than this one. Not that I don't like this one, but I just prefer that one that was raw a little bit more. But yeah, great album. Just fantastic thing to go through and kind of add to my library at this point.
Oh, cool. I've turned a few people onto these guys. I mean, I found out about these guys I was in high school and I had some high school friends that were all into punk, and one of them handed me this record, and from the first time I heard it, I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. And these and then I mean, now with the internet, whatever, you find out about the band. I mean, they're from London, Ontario.
Yep.
They came to Toronto to make it. They put out that record, and by the time that record was out, they were more or less broken up. So I mean, very, very short-lived. But there was a thriving punk scene here in the late 70s. And there's another band that outside of probably Ontario, most people never heard of, which I would recommend to you if you like the Green Day thing. You want to hear Green Day before Green Day, look up a band called Teenage Head. These guys were doing that stuff back in the late 70s and early 80s. Just another fantastic band.
Adding it to my
Kind of the
list.
same genre, but a little more party, a little more, party vibe. I mean, for me, the Demix are just basically a punk band that can actually really play their instruments. And that singer that guy's voice is just, it's to die for. He's got the perfect voice.
Yeah, let me riff off that too, real quick, about the playing their instruments. That's another thing that stood out, and I've actually listened to that Hum album that I gave you, kind of spoilers. But I'd actually listened to that Hum album a couple months ago again. I kind of get it on every once in a while. I'll go and listen to it. But I noticed that both the albums that we're talking about today, neither one of them have a lot of leads in it. Like a lot of,
Well, we're forbidden in your time, at that time period, which I'll get into when we start talking about this one. But yeah, they were forbidden.
But I thought it was interesting because there's a couple of the songs that have like, single note stuff and what you would call kind of a lead, but they relied more on, like you said, his voice, which is amazing. And they relied on that mix between the guitar and the bass and carrying off each other and playing off each other so much that I didn't really miss it. But the last time I went through it today, I'm like, there's no really big solos in that, just the Hum album.
And the keyboards in the background too were also super nice touch on some of those songs. Remind me a little bit of Elvis Costello very early on.
Yeah, and they're a hint. They're not overdriving. They're not out from front. They're a hint, and they're a compilation or a complementary to the song itself. Which, yeah, I agree with you on that. So
cool. So the Demix, how do you spell that for everybody watching?
Demics.
Yep.
Cool. I mean, the name of the album?
That they also have the record for the most thes at the beginning of their songs. The Gray and Black, the 400 Blows, the News, the Least You Can Do. So, and the Demix.
Talk. That's my favorite song. That's a great. Anyway, I love that record.
So the question is, now that you've had a week with it, you've talked about it, would you go out and buy it? Would you maybe stream it online occasionally, or would you kind of forget all about it after this episode?
No, it's going to come up on my regular list. I've already added. I've got a master list of all my songs that I care about and put on and just shuffle every once in a while. It's already on there. I would, we're unfortunately we're kind of in the digital age where it's easy to get stuff like this and to bring it up like you mentioned earlier. So, if I was in that age, in that time frame where you had to purchase something to get it, I would go out and purchase this in a heartbeat. Yeah, there's enough songs on it for me to want to go back and listen to on a regular basis that I would 100% go out and buy this if I had to.
Cool. There we go. We got a thumbs up there. All right.
Definitely.
So let's switch gears. Let's go over to Hack. And what were you given by Craig?
So I was given an album by the band Hum that I'd never heard of before, and the album's called Elektra 2000. So this is basically the atypical grunge record. That's the best way to describe it. So unfortunately, I'm not going to share Craig's enthusiasm because I was not a fan of this record. To me, this sounded like, and I'm just reading my notes here, a non-commercial version of Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, STP, insert band here. There just wasn't a lot musically interesting kind of going on that kind of grabbed me as a listener, and I gave it a lot of chances. But what I did was I kind of broke the songs down. I mean, I had to write the title because the songs they're nothing was latching, so I actually had to write them song by song just so I know what song I was talking about, because there's a lot of sameness throughout this. But Ironclad Lou, first track on the record. I mean, a lot of this, I found a lot of it formulaic. It starts off with the clean guitar and then the heavy guitars break in. What I noticed throughout the most part of the record is that the vocals were a little bit too buried in the mix. And that particular song, Ironclad Lou, the riffing was kind of Soundgarden, reminded me of Soundgarden. There was, at the 2/3 point, there was a little bit of a Zeppelin kind of offbeat thing that I did dig. That was a nice change. And Ironclad Lou was probably, there was like 2 songs on here that were not bad. This was one of the 2. This one was pretty good. Pinch and Roll. speaking of punk, I got a little bit of a punk vibe from this, punk with muddy guitars. The singer also does a lot of atonal stuff. I noticed he does not really trying to sing a melody. Kind of reminded me, with a little bit of attitude, almost reminded me of kind of a Johnny Rotten kind of delivery. Again, the riffs, they just I found them uninteresting. The breakdown was kind of cool, and then of course guitar solos were forbidden, so we couldn't have guitar solos at this point. It wasn't cool to play guitar back then. Um, that's pinch and roll. Then I have shovel. Again, big lumbering sounding guitars. The whole grunge thing. The dissonant chords. A lot of the five below the root, that kind of thing, fifth below the root. There was some single note lines on there, or octaves. That's just to kind of frame out the the melody a little bit. Angst ridden vocals, screaming over the top of the guitars on this. Again, they were kind of buried a little bit in the mix. Again, my notes here, not to my liking, very uninteresting. There was no hook or harmony to latch onto. Guitars sounded cool, but not interesting. So, I mean, even the progressions, I mean, it's just there was nothing to kind of you know, latch onto, so to speak. Then we got Pewter. Uh, Same. It starts off with the clean opening again, dissonant guitar voicings, mumbling singer. Uh, this is mean, but I wrote down here bad Pearl Jam copy band. Uh, there is an attempt at some vocal melody before the big guitars come in again. Then the track just gets drenched in fuzzy chords again. A definite sameness, formulaic from track to track. I'm just not getting it. It's not working on me. It's not working on me. I gotta be honest. Scraper. Don't like the riff. Right off the bat. Again, atonal singing over the top, no melody. I do like when the riff goes halftime, so that's interesting. Halftime, okay, makes for an interesting part of the song. Very brief. Again, another forgettable track, sameness as a lot of the others. Firehead. Now, this one was the other one that I liked, and why? Because it was a departure. This one was different and it was cool. It to me, I got and this is gonna probably freak you out, but I got a psychedelic furs vibe from this. This was like a grunge version of a psychedelic furs song, right? Pretty in Pink, that type.
Yeah.
The vocals on this one work. There's almost a guitar solo at the end. And it's a proper rock song. So Firehead and Ironclad Lou are like my two favorites on this. Then we have Sundress, Big Distortion, wah intro, which is cool. There's a wah, so there's a different sound. We haven't heard that wah yet. Singing a little more melodic on this one. Good chord changes in this, keeps it interesting. I like the riffing on this one. Breakdown at the end is another cool change. Enough in this track to keep me engaged. One of the better songs. So make that three. That were
Three, yeah.
okay. Double dip. You got that the clean guitar intro again. But this time it's catchy. So it's got a hook. Heavy guitars come in, lumbering feel. Total Pearl Jam vibe on this. Needs a more interesting B section to complement the A section. So that was one of those songs that kept sort of going off that intro lick, and it just needed something else, another part to otherwise the listener fatigue thing comes into play, which it did for me, and actually it gets I wrote there, actually gets annoying when he starts yelling. So that one started off well. We have Winder, starts with the bass riff, then gets doubled with the guitar. I wrote here boring riff, instant listener fatigue as riff runs through. Where's the B section in exclamation marks? Everything is coming off that riff, which isn't good to begin with. Unlistenable for me. So that was Winder. All right, we're getting near the end, I promise. Diffuse. So Diffuse, we got clean guitar intro, heavy guitars come in and play a different cool progression, back to clean part, which doesn't seem to go anywhere. More atonal singing over heavy guitar, dissonant chords, and matching guitar solo. At this point in the record, I'm exhausted and can't listen any further. Like, it just wore me out. I listened to this record. I think I did it like 4 times, and then I listened to it track by track and kind of wrote these. And I mean, I could not listen to it more than that. My conclusion: other than a couple of brief moments, I found the sameness, lack of melody, or interesting progressions wear me out from song to song. Lacks hooks, which might be intentional, maybe, if they want that angst, moody kind of record thing, but at least make it interesting. I call it a poor man's Soundgarden or Pearl Jam. Sorry.
Oh no, I don't. Everybody has opinions on music. I certainly am not. I mean, don't need to apologize at all. It is not for everybody.
Yeah.
So you may have heard their big hit Stars. I don't know if you've ever.
No.
Okay, if you go listen to it, I guarantee you've heard it because it's on like 3 car commercials.
Okay.
Have been on like 3 car commercials. That is what drew me into them. Yeah, and I definitely don't apologize, because it is what you're saying about the album is it is formulaic. It is kind of the same sound over and over again. And for me, that's what I look for in some of the music, is hearing those rolling guitars. And I think it's because I'm a guitar player that I listen to more of the guitars than I care about the vocals, that I probably didn't pay attention to those differences in those playoffs. So it's an honest opinion of how you feel about this music.
Well, I'm listening to it as a guitar player as well, and I write original music. So for me, I'm listening to, I want to hear an interesting progression. I want to hear a hook. I want to hear a B section. I want to hear, because when you're writing material, your biggest enemy is listener fatigue. You got to keep it interesting. And it's just, it is just the sameness from track to track. I mean, even the tones they were using, it's like, every, you could almost like cut and paste from one song to the other, and you wouldn't even notice it, a difference. I mean, I give it a couple of shining moments. Like I said, I did like, what was it? Firehead. That was kind of a nice departure. Ironclad Lou, I mean, I get the big heavy riffs. I love heavy guitar. I mean, I'm a big fan of that, but the riffs got to be interesting. Play some cool riffs, and then have something to accompany that. Have a B section, have something interesting, and if or have the singer carry the song melodically, and it just wasn't there.
Yeah, I think when I wrote music for our band, I think that was what grounded me, though, was the singer. The singer actually brought me back to that idea. I think if I wrote all of our library of songs, it probably would have sounded just like this. But I think I had such a good singer that reeled me back in and said, we need someone to sing. We need something that's in a range that people can sing, and we need something that they can sing over and over again. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I had kind of had to relent. So maybe that's why I'm drawn to it as a guitar player, is because that's the sound I want. That's the sound of songs I wanted. And, in the band that I was in, what I wrote was the music. And then I had the singer kind of draw me back in and say, hey, let's put words to this, and maybe you should slow this part down. Maybe you should come a little cleaner, or just play these chords a little bit longer so I can sing over it a little bit longer. So that might've been where that whole thing has come from, is I'm attracted to this band because that's the way I wanted my band to be.
I mean, but I'm listening. I mean, this was obviously, these guys were probably in their early 20s. Maybe that was their point. They were trying to make like the sort of melancholic, angst ridden, whatever. But I'm listening to this as a 50-year-old guy, and I'm listening for music. Not, I couldn't care less how you guys feel. I want to hear a good song. So if that was their goal, to sort of put out an album of, woe is us, we feel horrible, life sucks. I mean, they did that wonderfully, right? But it's not something, as a 50-year-old guy, I want to listen to. Give me some Zeppelin.
Yeah, I mean, Limp Bizkit made a career out of it. So I mean,
yeah.
Well, I would say that I know I know that the ears probably haven't healed from it yet, just go listen to the song "Stars" by the same band.
I will.
I'm guaranteeing you'll recognize.
I would love to give these guys a second chance.
I would say Peter probably even knows that song at this point.
I'm gonna off the top of my head. I'll go check it out though.
If you listen to it, you'll understand. And it is a lot more catchy, a lot more. Actually, the second album is probably the one I should have given you, because I'm looking at the list of the second album and it's got a lot more songs that have catchy lyrics in it. But just Stars in general, and then let your ears heal after this one, because
yeah. No, I mean, it's, if you see something, I mean, if you see something in this band, I'm sure there's something there. Just maybe just not in this package.
Not that package, not that album.
Well, like I always say, we all hear things differently, right?
So,
yeah, what's great to someone is not so hot to someone else. It's the way.
Guns N' Roses, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, perfect example, right? So cool. Well, Hack, it sounds like the three questions you're going to get. Would you buy it? Would you maybe stream it occasionally, or would you kind of forget it? I think we know the answer to this one.
Yeah, I can't do it again.
Yeah.
It happens, right? We don't
it does
every time, right? I did a show with Jamie Laszlo a couple weeks ago, and what he gave me, I didn't like at all. So it's like,
oh, what was it? I missed that one. What was it?
It was oh God, I don't even remember the name of the band. Right, for you probably love them. I'm drawing a complete blank on who it was, but it was a '90s band. Geez, what was the name of the band? I can't even remember now.
You send it to me in a chat later on.
Yeah, I'll do that. I completely forgot. I really forgot about them. I can't even remember who they were. Yeah, cool. All right, well, there you have it, everybody. We got two albums. We got one thumbs up, one thumbs down. This happens, right? We don't get perfect matches all the time. But I want to thank Hack and Craig for both taking part in this and doing their homework. And so let's get caught up on what they're doing. So Craig, what's going on over on Music Musing Podcast?
I kind of switched over to doing an interview, more of an interview format, and it's been on hold for a couple months, cleaning things up with the holidays and everything. I've got about 3 or 4 lined up. Actually, Pete's probably going to be one of the 4 that I've got lined up. I'm going to talk about his music history and put him on the spot. But yeah, it's music_musing for Twitter. It's musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com. And if you search Music Musing on any of the podcast formats, you'll be able to find it pretty easily. And it started with me and my brother talking about fun things with music, and it's kind of morphed into what it is now, with more interviewing and kind of getting people's history of how they came into music, how they learned music, who they listened to when they were a kid, and who their parents listened to and how they influenced them. But yeah, check that out. It's a pretty good podcast. Cool.
I look forward to coming back on again. It's been
a
little while. So excellent. Hack, what's going on over on your page?
I got some put up some new music. So they got a lot of original music. I'm up to 15 songs now. I've got out on DistroKid, all the streaming services, so Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that kind of stuff. Check out the channel. I got gear reviews. I got music reviews with Pete. Actually, we're doing one in about 2 weeks with Martin. I should mention Martin is up on that. It's coming along on that one too. So there's interviews, there's a lot of live streams, lots of content. I mean, put on the spot, but check out the original music, because I'm real proud of that, and I'll be working on something. I should have something new coming up before the new year, hopefully. So yeah.
Cool. And look for Hack on next week's Guitarist Corner here on the channel.
That's right.
Tuesday night, as a matter of fact. So stay tuned for that and a lot more stuff. So what do we got coming up here? So tomorrow night, it's Monday night. We've got Hudson Valley Squares. Tuesday in the Proxy. Wednesday is new album review day. I've got what do we got cooking this week? New Black Label Society, new Exodus, new Obscura, new Caligonaut, and maybe new Chick Corea acoustic band live. Hopefully going to get to all those this week. Thursday is the Monsters Den with Chris Allo, and Friday morning, Mr. Martin Popoff back in the house, in the Fun House. And then 1 week from today, we'll be back here, album homework assignment. And who do we got? Who is scheduled for next week? Jeez, I'm drawing a blank. I can't even remember. I'm way too busy. I don't know.
Pay attention. Watch
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
watch the channel.
Yeah, exactly. Just stay tuned, right? So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. For Guitar Hack and Craig Sybert, I am Pete Pardo. See you all real soon. Have a good rest of the weekend. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
See ya.